Welcome back, everybody, to the Quit Trippin' Podcast. I'm your host, Kristian.
And I'm Kevin.
We're about to get rocking and rolling with the Lord.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you liked our little intro there. We're having a little fun. In today's episode, what we're looking to do is we're going to talk a little bit with Kristian about track. We had another, I won't say record breaking, but bumping up in the record.
We close.
Yeah. And then, we're kind of going to go into some scripture regarding, also you had something in Hebrews, which actually we had in church today.
Yep.
And then I had something that I had just got done reading as part of my 52-week reading plan.
Yep. Mainly geared towards like temptation.
Right.
Yep.
So, so let's start off with, we are not talking about the 100 meter this time.
No.
It was a 4x2, correct? So,
yep.
You already broke the school record in the 4x1? Yeah, that's right. Because you got your picture with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So last year you broke the 4x100 record.
Yes,
so your name is on the board for that. We got a picture of that. Maybe I can throw that up for those who are watching.
Mm-hmm.
But then, so just this past, is it Tuesday? No.
Friday.
Was the polar bear relays. And
yep.
I should include your picture too that you made up. Is there any way to export that?
Yeah.
So 4x2, you guys have bumped up to second in Jackson history.
Yes, we did.
120. What would you say?
129.41.
Yep. So
yep.
You unfortunately had to make kind of a dive in order to make sure you got the baton in the anchor leg's hand.
I have the scars to prove it.
Yep. And so yeah, but you're a good sport. You actually made up a picture of yourself with a cape on.
Yeah, a little Superman cape, me flying through the air.
So I'll try to put that up as well. But so second, and then so now we're looking at what? So you guys will be second in the 4x2. Your name, you're getting close to having your name put up there for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 100, you're still sitting in ninth place, right?
I think so.
But still plenty of time to fix that problem too.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's really a problem, but yeah. So okay, so you're not running Tuesday. That's the JV Fed.
Tuesday, that's JV Feds. I'll probably go and watch though.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then when's the actual
Feds?
Yeah.
Friday.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's was it Glen Oak last year?
Yeah.
Is it where's
Lake
that
this year?
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. You got a new track though, so
that should be fun to watch.
It should be, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in good standings right now for the 100.
Mm-hmm.
It's really anybody's race at this point. I don't even like thinking about it.
Well, and so you've been saying that. I mean, I wouldn't get too wrapped up in thinking about it, but you were even saying like the kids that you went up to against in the Stark County Invitational have not even ran those same times since.
Nope.
They've been up in like the 11s, which basically where you're at. So yeah, like you're saying, it's anybody's game at this point.
Yep.
So, which that is kind of strange though, that for that one time they were able to run that fast. Do you think is it just they had a good day, or what do you think plays into that?
Yeah, I think they had a good day. I think it's a mix of like sometimes later in the season you start to overthink some parts of your race, and then you change too much about your race that you're not just running naturally. You're thinking way too much about it. Other times, they could be having some small injuries that affect them in the long run, as far as this season goes. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that can play into it.
Okay. I do remember like that day, that the Stark County Invitational, like
Hmm.
thinking, man, the times seem awful fast
They
today.
were
That's
really
kind of
fast. Yeah.
strange
I
because
don't
I
know.
know like you guys had, and I think I maybe mentioned this on the last one too, but you guys had ran there like not too. I think the meet that you had before that was also at Perry,
Yeah.
and the times were like slow. Like you
Yeah.
were
I ran like
actually
an
slow
11,
compared to what you normally were.
11:05,
I think
maybe.
yeah, I think your best time that time. I think you ran twice, right?
Not at the first pairing meet.
Or no, that's right. But it was the previous two times that you had ran. I think one time you ran like 11:58, and one time you ran like 11:63.
Yeah.
And I remember just like, this is really weird, really
Yeah. I
weird.
don't know.
So it is just a matter of whether you're having a good day, you're feeling good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a mental thing too.
Hmm.
Like majority of track is it's mental. Like unlike football or something like that, where your physique and everything, like your height, weight, all that stuff plays a factor,
Hmm.
like a bigger factor probably than your mental. But it's very very important.
Well, so do you think it's because of the fact that like football, it's more of a team sport, so it's like you could only do so much, and you have to rely on your team.
Maybe,
So it's not so much that I have to perform; it's as a team we have to perform.
definitely a
Maybe it takes some
possibility.
of that pressure off. But when you're running, it's just, I mean, you are in a sense running for your team, but really in that instance, you're just running. There's nothing that anybody else can do.
Yeah,
Either you're running good or you're not.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I think you said it best. It's like that's why track's so different than other sports. It's just like track and sports like wrestling and swimming. It's like it's you out there.
Mhm.
You can't rely on nobody else when you out there by yourself in the water or running or wrestling or whatever.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well, don't get in your own head.
I won't.
I think you're good.
Yeah,
So, well, hey, uh, do you want to start, or you want me to start with the Second Corinthians?
I'll start.
Okay. So, I'll try to put these up as you're reading them off. If
Okay.
anybody's watching and wants to take note of these,
All
so
right.
if you want to let us know, like include the translation too that you're reading.
I'm gonna be reading from Hebrews 12, message translation. Jeez, verses 14 through 17. So it says, "Work at getting along with each other and with God. Otherwise, you will never get so much as a glimpse of God. Make sure no one gets left out of God's generosity. Keep a sharp eye out for weeds of bitter discernment. A thistle or two gone to seed can ruin a whole garden in no time. Watch out for the Esau syndrome, trading away God's lifelong gift in order to satisfy a short-term appetite. You know well how Esau later regretted that impulsive act and wanted God's blessing, but by then it was too late. Tears or no tears."
So, were you familiar with that story? Whenever he said,
I
like, do
had
you
heard
remember?
about it.
Okay.
I hadn't heard about it in a minute, but yeah, I was familiar with it.
So, Esau basically comes in after being out, I think, a long day of hunting, maybe,
Hmm.
if I remember right, and he's so hungry and so starving, and Jacob was one that he stayed more kind of in the house and did different things, and he had some food cooked up.
Hmm.
And so I don't remember what all it was, but Esau basically kind of like traded his birthrights. In other words, his blessings and everything, kind of like Pastor Mike said,
Yeah.
traded that stuff just for food because he was more worried about
The right now.
like satisfying his flesh in that
Hmm.
moment as opposed to thinking long term. And uh, so yeah, so the topic at church this morning was take heed. So take heed's been the last couple actually services, but this one was more on like how we fast. So
Yeah.
take heed on how we fast. So that's how this kind of had tied in. Um, so I guess in that, what have you taken? Like, what's kind of, because I kind of asked about what, if there's anything that's hitting you, or any verses that really spoke to you.
Hmm.
So what, and that's really kind of.
I think just the part where it's talking about trading away God's lifelong gift in order to satisfy short-term appetite. Um, that was the part that stuck out to me the most. Um, just it could be anything in this world, whether it be like I don't know, you're trying to stay away from candy, but like you decide you want to get a little cheat or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you have like God's trying to get you to stay away from some stuff like that, or
Mm-hmm.
like things that are bad for you, like even more drastic things like drugs and stuff like that, just because you want to feel something that's very very temporary,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trading away the incredible things that God has for you just for something that's like two
Instant.
seconds long.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I just think it's crazy how our minds are able to like twist that into thinking it's okay for us to do stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Like, yeah. You're right. I mean, I think this is where like everybody's always talking about spiritual warfare.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think too, like with you just saying that, like I was realizing, is it last night or this morning we were talking about, um, like your plans last night, you know,
Oh yeah.
because we were talking about like your mom, how she's always encouraging us to pray before. Like, did
Yeah.
you pray on a situation?
Mhm.
And I mean, I guess I don't always think of it as like praying on a situation, but one of the things that I mean, it is a form of prayer. Uh, is just taking a minute to seek the truth in a situation.
Yeah.
Because I guess that was my concern regarding last night. Is like, okay, are you making your decision based off of a flesh desire just to be with somebody?
Yeah.
Is it really? Are we stopping and looking at the truth? Is it really a smart thing to do,
Mhm.
being that it was as late as it was?
Yeah.
Um, So, I mean, ultimately, those are just decisions that we're trying to let you make and
Mhm.
work through and seek guidance on. But you're right, it is difficult. I mean, and it doesn't get any easier.
Yeah.
There's things all the time. Like I'm catching myself right now with coffee,
Mhm.
and like, okay, I've been doing so good at like keeping myself to 1 cup of coffee,
Yeah.
but then I splurge on the weekends. And then the other thing is like I've used quite a few vacation days recently too. It's like
Mhm.
on those days I'm doing, instead of 1 cup, I'm doing 2 or 3 cups.
Yeah.
And where I kind of had to reel myself in was like yesterday.
Mhm.
I've been working on that table all day,
Yeah.
and I think I had 3 or 4 cups.
Mm.
um, but yeah, and so this is like good stuff here, like to print out and keep somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, kind of like, if you can see it behind us. Like your mom does all this nifty word art and
Yeah.
stuff that, because I actually made the comment too one time about always wanting to remember like the things that God has brought me out of, like the
Mhm.
changes He's made, and
That's the main reason I have this. It's my lock screen. It's me on crutches, if y'all can see.
so
But
yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. Have we ever shared that story?
When I tore my ACL,
Hmm.
I don't know if we'd
I
have.
mean, so last time um, we shared about your records and stuff, but what maybe people don't know is that your freshman year was that was like preseason, right? Football. Like you were in a scrimmage whenever you.
Yep. It was the last scrimmage before our first game.
Okay.
Yep.
Torn ACL. Did you do something else
And
too?
like I tore my ACL. In the process of tearing my ACL, like when the ligament ripped off the bone, it took some bone with it, so I
Oh,
fractured my tibia as well.
okay. So surgery for that, and then
I was back in about 5 months.
yeah. So you actually ran track your freshman year then.
I did. Yeah.
So
It
actually
was.
ran in.
I ran
You
it
were
with a limp.
alternate.
Hmm?
Were you like an alternate at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was an alternate for most of the season.
Did you letter your freshman year then in
I
track?
did.
Wow. So
I
from
did.
being out
Yep.
of football to lettering your freshman year in track.
Mhm.
That's cool.
Based off points.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's the reason for the screensaver
Mhm.
and the crutches.
Yep.
Good reminder. And
Very good reminder.
I think that's the thing too. I don't like. Do you ever have moments where you're just like you have to remind yourself of because you can so easily forget.
Yeah. Like I was mad about that 11-1 the other day, and then I was just thinking back. I'm like, I remember when we were trying to break 12. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Just be happy you can walk.
Mm-hmm.
You can even run. So, yeah, it's just times like that. It's like, all right, let's take a step back. Remember where you were. Thank
Mm-hmm.
God that you're not where you were, but you also know that you not where you have the potential to be just yet.
Mm-hmm.
But just be happy where you are.
Yeah.
Not content. Be happy where you are. With what you got.
Well, so I'll also say this, and you know what? I don't know. Maybe this is one of the reasons things seem to have gotten better for me. I've been watching I was watching a lot of like Ask Cliff and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, a lot of times there's debates with like people who are not believers.
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes I'll struggle with the question of, well, what if God doesn't really exist?
Mm-hmm.
What if I'm doing all this, and what if the rapture never happens, and I'm crucifying myself and all these things? But then I'm like, it may be sometime later, but I'm like, wait a minute, what are you saying?
Yeah.
How many times have you just been like, all right, I know, Lord, you just spoke to me in this
Yeah.
situation. And I'm like, I'll just catch myself and I'll be like, what are you thinking? Why? Don't go there. Don't go believe in those lies.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, um, well, hey, you read in Hebrews.
Did.
So one of the things I had was in 2 Corinthians chapter 6. So 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 3. We put no stumbling block in anyone's path, so that our ministry will not be discredited.
Did we want
Talk about the stumbling block.
to?
Y'all, I want to tell you right now, this software issue is getting a little frustrating.
It is.
So this is our third time recording this little segment, but yeah. So stumbling block, just real quick. So the reason we're bringing this up is because the Quit Tripping name has come from, well, so initially it was I had thought of Purchased as having a name.
That was the first one.
But then I think at the time, like I was stumbling with I think it was when I was stumbling with Romans 9, and so I thought, you know what, I want this podcast to be based on answering some of these difficult questions. So that's when I said the stumbling block, hence the stumbling block, and why we're talking about that. But then you put a twist on it and said, how about Quit Tripping? And that got the unanimous vote. So
now we the Quit Tripping podcast.
Now we are the Quit Tripping podcast. So, yeah. So so continuing verse 4, rather as servants of God, we commend ourselves in every way, in great endurance, in great trouble, hardships and distresses, in beatings, imprisonments, and riots, in hard work, sleepless nights, in hunger, in purity, understanding, patience and kindness, in the Holy Spirit, and in sincere love, in truthful speech, and in the power of God, with weapons of righteousness in the right hand and in the left, through glory and dishonor, bad report and good report, genuine yet regarded as impostors, known yet regarded as unknown, dying and yet we live on, beaten and yet not killed, sorrowful yet always rejoicing, poor yet making many rich, having nothing and yet possessing everything. We have spoken freely to you, Corinthians, and opened wide our hearts to you. We are not withholding our affection from you, but you are withholding yours from us. As a fair exchange, I speak as to my children. Open wide your hearts also. So, I know we've kind of wrapped up the heart discussion already, but
Mm-hmm.
um, we see it a couple times there. So in verse 11, he says, "And opened wide our hearts to you," and then he ends with saying, "And so I speak as to my children, open wide your hearts also."
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was a really good ending to that. But if we kind of go back and look at a couple other things here, let's see, just talking about in troubles, hardships, and in distresses, in beatings, imprisonments, and riots, in hard work, sleepless nights, and hunger, in purity, understanding, patience, and kindness. So these are ways that they're commending themselves, because it's like, even though we endure these many temptations, these many trials, these are what we can. These are this is what God's putting in front of us that really helps us to grow. So we're commending ourselves because we've not let these things discourage us.
Right.
Um,
I like how
which
it says dying and yet we live on.
mhm,
Like we're still being destroyed and like not destroyed, but like put down by all these things,
mhm.
and we're still trucking through.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and let's see, I'm trying to think here. Yeah. Well, and then again, beaten and yet not killed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sorrowful yet always rejoicing, and poor yet making many rich. So yeah, a lot of this is like, yeah, we have these things happen, but we're doing it for the glory of God,
Yeah.
for right, well, what does it say here? In the Holy Spirit and sincere love, and truthful speech, and in the power of God, with weapons of righteousness in the right hand and in the left, um, which is another, speaking towards just having that full armor of God on. Um, I don't remember exactly at this point what we said and when, but
Yeah.
uh, so much of this is like just remembering, even in these times, like remembering these times, remembering who gets us through it,
Yep.
and also remembering the truth, and seeing through the devil's lies.
You have to. Yeah.
Because if we're armed with all of that, we can go through those hard times
Mm-hmm.
rejoicing, because we know that uh, despite whatever the devil is giving us or tempting us with, that is a time where we can really grow,
Yeah.
where we can grow our endurance, really,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what it boils down to. When you're, I think that's one of the difficult things nowadays, is because of the fact that we got iPhones that have, or smartphones, I should say, not iPhones, but smartphones, where we can get answers to anything
Yeah.
really, really quick. Uh, if we want food, we can order it through our phone and have it delivered to
Mm-hmm.
us in no time. Uh, we've got fast food. You don't even have to go out and rent a movie anymore. You can literally just rent it right on your
Yeah.
TV. So everything happens like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, for me, I've gained a new appreciation for going through the process, not seeking that. Ooh, this is good. Not seeking that instant gratification, that
Yeah.
that flesh like instant gratification, but actually instead going through the process, um, to obtain, because I think you become like, you're more grateful for those things in that as well.
Yeah.
Like if you think about somebody who gardens their own food versus somebody who just goes to a grocery store and buys
Mm-hmm.
whatever they want, um, you know, people who garden tend to have more appreciation for what they've got. They appreciate it more, um, and because they know what's in it
Mm-hmm.
or not in it. They're not. They don't have to worry about being pumped full of preservatives or anything like that. But
Yeah. I think like with what you're talking about it bringing you closer
mhm.
to God and stuff like that. It kind of reminds me of when I was telling you about that friend that I had that was dealing with that um the loss of her uncle.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it was just like using that scenario to bring you closer to God instead of allowing it to push you away from God and allowing yourself to blame God for stuff like that. Like,
Mhm.
you should be using that opportunity to talk to him and find peace in him
Mhm.
and resolve. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to grow. Otherwise, the devil is winning and he's using that sad and sorrowful moment
Mhm.
to blur your vision
Yeah.
and make you think that these untruths are true.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just really think that getting closer in your word will help keep you focused and on the right track.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
I think I don't remember if I still have it marked or not. Regarding times when things get rough, bad things happen. I think it's Isaiah 57. But what you just said though that really triggered with me was like so many times people want to blame God for a bad thing that has happened,
Mm-hmm.
maybe at the death of a family member or whatever. Um, but if you think about it, what if God was protecting them from something that he knew was going to happen? So he just, rather than having them have to go through that trial
Yeah.
that was going to be extremely difficult, he removed that person to protect them. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you know somebody's going to have to go through something really, really difficult, but yet they have this way out that would be a whole lot easier, wouldn't you rather them
Yeah.
go through that easier route? I mean, so if God decides to remove them to protect them from that and bring them, to heaven,
Mm-hmm.
that's good. So I'm going to try to. I'm fairly certain this is something. Where's Isaiah 57? No, that's not right. Well, maybe it is. So it says the righteous. So this is Isaiah 57 NIV, uh, the very first verse. I feel like I don't know why this doesn't. You ever have like these moments where you're like, okay, I know exactly where I remember reading that.
Yeah.
And so like I feel like when I read that up in the upper left corner, but this is not in the upper left corner. But it says the righteous perish and no one takes it to heart. The devout are taken away and no one understands it.
Mm.
That the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. Those who walk uprightly enter into peace and they find rest as they lie in death.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I know I'd written that down somewhere, but like again, I thought it was. Ooh, wait. So maybe it is 57, but maybe it was verses 18.
Mm.
I have seen their ways, but I will heal them. I will guide them and restore them. Or I will guide them and restore comfort to Israel's. No, that's not it either. Anyway, um, yeah, that was good. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so let's go ahead and look at like the last little part here in chapter 6. Um, so
Verse
this is
14.
verses 14
Okay.
through chapter 7, verse 1. But this section in my Bible is called Warning Against Idolatry. And again, this is NIV, so 2 Corinthians 6, verse 14. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? For what fellowship can light have with darkness? What harmony is there between Christ and Belial? Or what does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement is there between the temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God, as God has said, I live with them and walk among them. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, come out from them and be separate. Touch no unclean thing, and I will receive you. And I will be a father to you, and you will be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty. Therefore, since we have the promises, dear friends, let us purify ourselves from everything that contaminates body and spirit, perfect holiness out of reverence for God. So there's a couple things I wanted to to kind of hit on out of this. Uh, I think the first question that kind of comes up is for what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Um, so he says, don't be yoked together with unbelievers.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you take that? Because oftentimes we feel like we're called to testify to unbelievers or spread the good news.
Don't be yoked together with unbelievers. I think, yeah, we are called to testify to unbelievers, but I think they're just saying don't surround yourself with unbelievers.
I think you nailed that on the head.
Yeah, I just
It's like
it's
don't hang out. Like, yes, you can go and testify to them and share
mm-hmm.
the good news, but don't befriend those people and start hanging out with them
Yeah,
on like a regular basis.
because they can. I mean, the people that you hang around with shape you and like
Hmm.
shape who you are and your personality. So without even realizing it, they can start rubbing off on you
Hmm.
and then lead you astray when you're
Yeah.
trying to bring them closer to God, have a negative effect.
Hmm.
So
Is there any people that you have like that right now that maybe you need to?
I would say I did have a lot more people like that prior to coming into this year, and I realized that it's okay to cut people off like that. Like
Hmm.
it's not being mean, it's not being rude. It's doing what you need to do to better your relationship with God.
Hmm.
Um and I don't know, maybe help them realize that it's not okay for them to be acting the way that they are.
Okay.
And maybe a wake up call, reality
Hmm.
check.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. So the only other thing, well, I should say the only other thing. So we were talking about like touch no unclean thing, and for whatever reason, I had a verse in my head. I shouldn't say I had a verse in my head. I was thinking of that somewhere there was scripture that said that what God, like everything God has made, has been deemed clean.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so your mom had given us Acts. There's Acts chapter 10.
Verse 11.
Yeah, and then there's a chapter. The same verse is in chapter 11 as well.
Okay.
So let me see here. So so Acts 10, verse 15. And this is whenever Peter has his vision. So he has this dream where there's a large sheet being let down to earth by its four corners. It contains all kinds of four-footed animals. The Unashamed podcast, the Robertsons love to refer to
Mm-hmm.
this verse because people talk about their hunting and everything,
Yeah.
and they're like, "We're instructed by God." um, but anyway, because they go on, it says it contained all kinds of four-footed animals as well as reptiles and birds. Then a voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." And he says, "Surely not, Lord." Peter replied, "I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice spoke to him a second time, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean."
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of repeats in chapter 11. So Acts chapter 11, so in particular, that do not call anything impure that God has made clean is also in chapter 11, verse 9.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, even in that, like so he's saying don't call anything impure that God has made clean. So he's
Okay.
not saying that everything is clean.
Yeah.
He's just saying don't call things unclean that I've already deemed clean. So
So like maybe a person that has just recently changed their life around and you're talking on them like, don't you smoke or don't you blah blah blah, blah.
mhm.
And it's like, no, that was my past. I don't do that anymore.
Mhm.
So maybe they're talking about stuff like that and like people that have truly been turned around and like you don't need to be bringing that stuff up about them because they're a new person in Christ.
You know what I didn't think to do before was actually look at. No, no, I was gonna say I did should look at the study notes
Hmm.
at the bottom. But the only thing it has, it says referring to come out from them. So where does that? Oh wait, come out from them and be separate. Touch no unclean thing, and I will receive you. So it says see Revelation 18:14 and or 18:4 in the note. But we can hit that next time.
Okay.
We'll do some more studying on that. But for now, I know you got things you got to do.
Yep.
Got a busy week ahead of you. Well,
Mhm.
so I don't remember if we mentioned this at the beginning, but you're not running Tuesday.
I'm not running Tuesday.
That's just the JV feds.
Yep.
But you will be running Friday
Mm-hmm.
in the feds, and then this next weekend you got prom.
Do have prom.
Are you excited for that?
I'm very excited for
Are
prom.
you?
Yeah, I want to. I'm very excited because I know people have told me it's a lot better than homecoming.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing a lot of people that I know there, taking some cool pictures next to some airplanes. So
It's going to be at the Maps Air Museum again,
yeah.
right?
So it'll be dope.
So I think I had told you about whenever I grew up, like what one of the traditions they always had was they did a promenade. So people, yeah. So
Sounds like lemonade.
yeah. So what they would do is like it was a big thing. Like you would, oftentimes you would know somebody who had like a really cool classic car, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe they had like a Lambo or something. Not that I don't remember that happening too much.
Yeah.
But it was always this thing. Like some people would come in on a tractor, so they would basically get dressed up in their normal like tuxedo or
Yeah.
whatever, and then they would come up the school street, and it would just be lined up with all these unique people. So do you remember like the Egyptians? I forget what they're called. Like the I don't know what you want to call her, but she would be like on this thing, like, and there would be Egyptians that would be like carrying her on this thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I can't think of what they're called, but it's like it'd basically be like carrying a bed around, but like they had like the poles that stuck through, and so like the servants or whatever
It's
would be
almost like
carrying
what
her,
people get picked up on when they're like in an ambulance or something like that.
kind of like a gurney.
Yeah, like a gurney.
Yeah,
type thing.
something like that.
But not.
But
Yeah.
it would like a lot of them would have like this elaborate thing. But anyway, the point I'm getting at is somebody came in on one of those one time. They had like a bunch of people that carried them in on this thing, and then they lowered them down and they got off. But
Sometimes
anyway,
it's like a chariot type thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they would get off so they would do that up to the school, like up to where the entrance was into the gym and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would get out, and then they would walk up through and go through the gymnasium, and then go out the back of the school, and then hop in their regular vehicle or whatever, and then drive up to where the prom was held.
Okay.
And I was asking, or I shouldn't say asking. I think I said something about like I don't know if they still do that or not.
No.
Because
they
have a new school. Well, so what I'm learning is like this is very traditional for where I went to high school at. You don't really hear about it anywhere else. Because I was asking, so I have a coworker whose his son was going to prom yesterday.
Okay.
Their prom was yesterday, and he looked at me like I was crazy too. I'm like, I thought this was something that all schools did, but apparently not. But they still do it, so it's still a tradition. They're still doing it. I being that I'm back on Facebook, I was seeing it. So I think they had their prom last weekend too.
Okay.
And yeah, they're riding up on like side by sides, like ATVs and different cars and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, not to say that this didn't happen, but from the ones I saw, I didn't see any tractors, but I know I've seen tractors in the past. People riding up on tractors and everything like that. But yeah, they still do it, and it's kind of cool just to see that that's still a tradition down there. So, but anyway, we'll let you get out of here.
All right.
Until next time, we'll see you guys later. Big heads. What? Oh, it didn't work.
What'd you say?